Good evening, you're watching Left, Right and Centre. I'm Nidhi Razdan. Tonight, the Centre creates a storm after the Attorney General tells the Supreme Court that institutions like the Aligarh Muslim University should not have minority status, that a secular state cannot be funding a minority institution. While the university is fighting back, others say that states shouldn't be funding institutions that are for one particular religion. That's our big debate this evening. Also, we're going to be going live to Goa tonight, where the government, the opposition and environmentalists are fighting over coconut trees. We'll tell you why. But first tonight, should Muslims have their own university? That is at the heart of a debate that has been reopened, with the Centre telling the Supreme Court recently that the Aligarh Muslim University should not have minority status. AMU's minority tag was first taken away by the Supreme Court in 1967. However, the Indira Gandhi government restored it through an Act of Parliament in 1981. This, however, was struck down by the Allahabad High Court in 2006, and since then the case has been pending in the Supreme Court. The NDA government's stand is opposite to the one that had been taken by the previous UPA government. In fact, one judge has even asked whether a change of government prompted a change of stand.
Jamia Millia Islamia preparing for its Convocation Day on Tuesday, an event which the Prime Minister of India declined to attend as the chief guest, and an invitation which the Human Resource Development Minister Smriti Irani has not responded to at all. A reflection of the tension between the centre and the university, with the government saying in court it is not in favour of central universities being run as minority institutions.
I will only say this, that when you establish a university by an Act of Parliament, that university is secular in nature.
A stand which is received with caution on campus. It also has quotas for Muslim students, which Aligarh Muslim University says it doesn't.
The literal meaning of the word, of the term Jamia Millia Islamia, it's University of the Islamic Community. So this university, this Jamia, actually it was established by the Muslim community for the benefit and for the upliftment of the Muslim community.
गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने राजेंद्र सच्चर को बैठाया गया था और उन्होंने एक जो माइनॉरिटी की जो कंडीशन है उसको देखने के लिए उन्होंने बैठाया. उन्होंने रिकमेंड किया था शिक्षा क्षेत्र में खासतौर पर जामिया जैसे इदारे हैं उनको एक माइनॉरिटी को जो एजुकेशन स्टेटस है उसको उभारने के लिए रिजर्वेशन दिया जाए. तो मेरा ये मानना है कि ये रिजर्वेशन होना चाहिए.
The Vice Chancellor of Aligarh Muslim University is hoping to meet the Prime Minister to request him to keep their minority status intact, while Jamia hopes that they're not on the same boat. After all, the AMU case is in Supreme Court, while Jamia's status is being challenged in the Delhi High Court.
The government says they are only going by the 1967 Supreme Court order in the Aziz Basha case that held that Aligarh Muslim University was founded by a central act and so its minority status cannot be upheld. But during the Indira Gandhi government in 1981, there were amendments to the AMU Act which brought back minority status. This was, however, challenged in Allahabad High Court and is now pending in Supreme Court. Aligarh Muslim University maintains they have no quotas for Muslims, but they were established by Muslims for the community. While the issue of minority status is one that had divided the community too, with many prominent Muslims saying this ghettoizes the community. Prominent scholars like Maulana Mahmood Madani have questioned the timing of this move.
सवाल ही पैदा होता है कि अगर ये सारी यूनिवर्सिटियों में ऐसा हो जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, मैं वेलकम करूंगा आपको. सिर्फ दो है, आप लोगों को एलिनिएट मत करिए.
एएमयू से संबंधित जहां तक सवाल है या और जो केंद्रीय शिक्षण संस्थान है उससे संबंधित सवाल है, वो मैटर अभी कोर्ट में है. कोर्ट में जो उसका रिव्यू हो रहा है उस पर चर्चा होने दीजिए.
While many would argue that minority institutions fall into the trap of ghettoization, the final word will come from the courts. In New Delhi with Sunitra Chaudhary, Kinshu Dang for NDTV.
Well, joining us on the program tonight on this rather complex and interesting debate, we have the President of the Supreme Court Bar Association and Senior Advocate of the Supreme Court, Mr. Dushyant Dave, Professor Rizwan Kaisar, the Head of the Department of History and Culture at the Faculty of Humanities at Jamia Millia, joins us tonight. Professor S. Irfan Habib, author and historian, is with us here in the studio. Gaurav Bhatia, spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, is with us tonight, and Sambit Patra, spokesperson of the BJP. Dushyant Dave, my question is to you first, because this has been a long and complicated legal battle over the decades that we've seen, particularly pertaining to the status of Aligarh Muslim University. As it stands today, as of today, is AMU a minority institution? And if you can simplify it for us, the case that is pending in court, would it affect only Aligarh Muslim University or all minority institutions in this country?
First and foremost, I think you must understand that what the constitutional framers wanted this country to be. There is no doubt that Articles 29 and 30 of the Constitution have a great role to play, and that is really to maintain the culture of the minorities as intact as possible. And part of that, right, constitutional right, fundamental right, the constitutional framers also said that you will have a right to be protected by the state insofar as educational institutions are concerned. You will have a right to establish and administer minority institutions. I think those debates of the Constituent Assembly are extremely relevant today. I think the government respects Dr. Ambedkar immensely, and I really wish government would look at what Dr. Ambedkar and his colleagues really wanted the status of minorities to be in this country. Having said that, let me tell you one thing, that both the Aligarh Muslim University and Jamia Millia, for example, Jamia was established during the Khilafat movement, which was a movement which was started by the Muslim leaders to support Mahatma Gandhi, and it was part of that really set up this institution. Similarly, Aligarh Muslim University was also started by the Muslim community along with others. I think the status which has been enjoyed over last maybe 8 decades or 9 decades should really not be touched by the government. And I have no doubt, irrespective of what the learned Attorney General has said, because he looks at it legally, the Prime Minister perhaps will look at it globally and take a very, very pragmatic, very, very humanistic, and perhaps a view which would really not break this nation into divisions ultimately in the long run.
But Mr. Dave, the point also is, as is the case in many other issues as well, this is a long pending legal battle now, because the status of Aligarh Muslim University, that whole issue of whether Parliament actually had a right to bring in those amendments in 1981, actually that is the case, if I'm not mistaken, that the Supreme Court is currently hearing, and it's been hearing for almost 10 years now. There is a lot of ambiguity as a result of that, and I wanted to know what, once this order is out, would it affect, for instance, St. Stephen's College, would it affect other minority institutions in this country, or is this very specific to Aligarh Muslim University?
Let me tell you one thing, and I think that's where nation must really understand, that merely because there is an act of parliament does not mean that the minority status cannot be given and protected. Far from it. The constitutional obliges the parliament also that you must recognize and give a status of minority to those institutions which are established by the minorities. So I don't buy this argument that simply because parliament has intervened, or for that matter some funds are given by the government, it loses the status of a minority. No. On the contrary, constitution really obliges the state to spend money to ensure that the culture of the minorities, their status, their identity is maintained and is protected and is allowed to be nourished in the long run. The Supreme Court judgment, whatever it is going to be, I don't think really will affect any, but it will have certainly some impact in the long run, and it would be extremely, I would say, important or far-reaching for this country in the long run.
All right. Before I bring in the political voices here, Professor Kaisar, you are from Jamia Millia Islamia. I see you nodding there in agreement with what Dushyant Dave is saying. The counter argument that many have had, however, is whether in a country like India, which it prides itself on being a secular country, whether there should be universities that get a minority tag. Does it have a place in this century?
What one should recognize, and everybody must, concern here is providing education to Muslims in order to mainstream them with the larger society. How do you do it if not with the help of education? When we say that minority, whether the state can fund a particular minority institution, but the moment you say minority is only 50% minority and 50% majority. But here is not a question of majority versus minority. Here is an ordinary concern, pure concern, how do Muslims access the modern education? if not with the help of university like Jamia or AMU. These are not madrasas. These are not religious seminaries. These are modern learning institutions. And it's only with the help of which we go into the process of nation building. Then somebody is saying that how can parliament build laws only benefiting one particular community? One can come up with 1,000 other issues when certain laws have benefited only a particular kind. One can talk about reservation for scheduled caste, scheduled tribe. And then you realize that Christian scheduled caste being outside it, Muslim scheduled caste being outside it, that's not the question. Question is, I think I entirely agree with Mr. Dave. There is a large-heartedness approach to the entire issue, that how do you look at it? As if minority is not part of the nation. So the whole nation can progress, but the minority can stay where it has been, say, 60, 70 years ago. Such committee report has been able to reveal so much about all kinds of discrimination and the rest.
In fact,
and
we have some
point,
of those
Nidhi,
figures. We have some of those figures of the Sachar
Rangnath
committee.
Mishra Commission says that if you really want to improve upon the educational condition of Muslim, let there be many more universities like AMU and Jamia.
Okay, you are making an important point where you're saying that it is important to sort of mainstream the Muslim community, bring up their standards of education through institutes of excellence, which is what the Aligarh Muslim University and Jamia are. Professor Habib, I actually read that in the past you have had reservations, your own reservations and concerns about the minority tag. First, explain to me why.
No, my problem is, look at Jamia till 2011, and that's what I was talking to Rizwan a couple of minutes ago. Nobody even talked about it. It functioned perfectly well with all the policies of empathy towards Muslims, support for Muslims, providing them modern education, etc. Nobody cared. Something happened in 2011, and that something is being explained in terms of the reservation policy which came in, and Jamia probably felt that minority character can be some sort of a shield to escape this reservation issue. No? That's what people are trying to explain. But I don't think that should have been the stand. Now, the government should take that sort of stand, because these two institutions, these are the only two institutions for minorities which are being run in this country, and they have done huge service, despite the fact that Sachar committee report talks so badly about the status of minorities. But these institutions have played a key role, which they should be allowed to play. If you bring in politics, the politics was brought in 2011, the same politics I see being brought in now. I doubt the motive, as Madani Saab said. Why do you have to touch these issues? There are so many things to be done in education.
Okay, let me bring in the politicians then. And so, Sambit Patra, to you first. The question that even one of the judges asked was there a change of heart on the government's position and the centre's position, because a new government had come at the centre, and that this is in line with the BJP's kind of politics?
Absolutely agree with all my previous speakers who said that, well, yes, I mean, mainstreaming of Muslims into the educational world is absolutely necessary, and no one disagrees with this. Absolutely right. Even the Prime Minister says that awareness amongst the Muslim, awareness among the Dalit will in fact make them more empowered. But secondly, someone also proposed that, well, a large-heartedness approach was what was required. I would beg to differ over here by saying that, well, legality does not see the size of the heart. Legality has nothing to do with the size of the heart. Legality is right or wrong. You cannot be anywhere middle with the size of the heart and all that. Thirdly, as far as the interpretation is concerned, you're absolutely right that the judge asked this question, but let me tell you what the answer was. The answer was that the government has the right of interpreting the law in the rightful manner. And well, yes, if the law was previously interpreted in a wrong way, this government has corrected that mistake of identifying the law and interpreting it in the rightful way. Because in 1967, when Aziz Bhasha's case went in front of the 5-judge constitutional bench of Supreme Court, and when the delivery came in case of Aziz Bhasha versus Union of India, naturally the fundamental rules were laid down, and the fundamental rule was university was started by a central legislation and was neither started nor run by the Muslim minority, and this basic truth cannot be altered or changed, because thereafter, after 1951 and 1965 amendments came, and We have seen after 2006 also, Allahabad High Court was twice approached, a single bench judge, Arun Tandon, and the division bench thereafter. Both maintained that though there might have been a 1981 amendment by Indira Gandhi, but that does not change the basis of judgment. Rather, they went to the extent of saying, I should quote what they said that the act may have been passed as a result of efforts of the Muslim minority, but that does not mean that the university, when it came into being under the 1920 Act, was established by the Muslim minority. So I believe the basis of the judgment, the basis of the government's interpretation is absolutely clear. The big issue also is, remember the Anup Bhaskar case which has gone to the Supreme Court, that 50% of reservation for the Dalit community, which was denied to the Dalit community in AMU as well as in Jamia Millia. In AMU this continued, I believe, up to 2003-2004, and in Jamia Millia till approximately 2011. Thereafter, both these institutions have done away with the Dalit reservations. Bharatiya Janata Party and we all, I think everyone in the panel also stands by the right of Dalits.
Okay, so Sambit is making an argument, Gaurav Bhatia, and Gaurav, you're a lawyer as well. He's making an argument based on the 1967 Supreme Court judgment, saying that basis is still correct today, that should still hold today, and that what Parliament then did in 1981 wasn't correct. Gaurav, what's going on here? Are we seeing a political battle actually being played out on this, because we're going to see elections in Uttar Pradesh in a year from now?
Nidhi, absolutely right, and that is why the central government should act with some responsibility. And I must point out to Mr. Sambit Patra that even before the High Court, the Union of India had taken a particular stand. And then suddenly, before the Supreme Court, there has been a change of heart and they have changed their stand. Now, the historical data and the history of the university cannot be ignored. And my friend Mr. Sambit Patra referred to the 1967 judgment. He should also be aware that the necessary parties were not even heard when this Constitution Bench judgment was passed. I have spoken to many persons who are connected with the AMU, and all that they have asked for is that since they were not heard in 1967, this matter should be referred to a larger bench of 7 judges and they should be heard before any verdict is passed on this university.
It wasn't even heard at that time. You're right. The Aligarh Muslim University itself wasn't
heard.
And
one more point, Nidhi, which is very relevant. One more point, Nidhi. And I hope that the Union of India would maintain the same standards and the same kind of stand when it would come to other minority institutions, like there are institutions run by Jains and Sindhis all over the country. And I hope at that time also, the argument that the Union of India has taken in this case, they will also take in other cases. And we are not sure of that because they are selectively taking a stand in the Supreme Court. They have not consulted the persons who would be affected. And I therefore say that it is a political stand, it is a stand in haste without judging the repercussions of such a stand.